We spend 85% of our lives inside.
But have you ever stopped to think how the design of a building is affecting you? Architecture can change the way you feel, the way you behave. It can even change the brain.
That feels weird already.
Architects are impacting the structure of my brain, but they're not taking into consideration how.
Are we so obsessed with shiny icons that we've stopped thinking about the people inside them?
That is absolute nonsense. We're all architects and we all live in the real world.
It's time to rethink our relationship with the most important buildings in our life. The places where we work, where we live, and where we play. We spend 8 hours working and 8 hours sleeping. But what about the other 8 hours?
These days we come together by going shopping, watching sport, by going to art galleries, drinking coffee. We come together through leisure, through play.
But do the new buildings we're being given really work?
There's such a gap between what architects think human beings want and what they actually need.
Are these new play spaces bringing us together just like they did in the past, or are they pulling us apart? When we're kids, play comes to us quite naturally, but we carry on playing when we're adults too. When we go to church, when we go shopping, when we go to rock concerts, it's all basically play.
Psychologists all agree that our social life is the adult version of play. It joins us to each other and keeps us sane.
A big sand cake I'm making.
But these days in Britain, our adult lives feel far from playful. Our working hours are the longest in Europe, and we live more isolated and stressful lives than we used to.
I want to find out if the spaces we're being given to play in are doing their job properly.
We've been building special places to socialise in for a long time, and some of them worked really well. This is the kind of place where architecture was invented. A structure like this wasn't about shelter, but about something more important.
This monument was built to make sure that we came together.
Dr. Lionel Sims studies the social life of our ancestors.
We would have arrived coming up the avenue, going uphill past the hillstone there, and then there's a gap through the centre of the monument. So as you're walking, your eye is going up because we're travelling uphill, the sun is going down, and therefore you're counterbalancing these two movements to create the illusion that the sun's descent has been stopped. And the design of this architecture requires you to be here at certain times and do certain things.
So it's almost central to society. It sounds fundamental.
Definitely. This is a ritual centre, which is serious play.
The incredible effort they must have gone to build this place makes it clear that what they did here was fundamental to their lives.
Why is play and ritual and fun, why is it so important to us?
It overcomes all of those things that in normal life divide us. So if we can periodically engage in play as adults, then we overcome the problems of adult life.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
We're still here today, but not in the same way. We're keeping to the footpath, following instructions.
Press number 2 on your keypad.
Stand here for a moment.
When you reach the second tour marker,
Listen.
number 2, keep listening.
Look towards the stones.
And then press the play button.
Oops. Don't worry. See, it's a bit bonkers, really. Everyone's sort of wandering around on their own. They're not really aware of everybody else. And that's sort of what it's like here. It's not real play. It's not play in groups. It's everyone floating around on their own, all doing their surreal little dance with their audio guides and their cameras and their video cameras and sort of looking, but not really experiencing somehow.
Stonehenge has turned from a social centre that meant everything to its community into a passive spectacle to be admired from afar. Sadly, these days we're creating more and more passive spectacles, and we're getting architects to do it for us. Places that are shiny on the outside, but empty of real social meaning. Buildings like this. It's an art gallery, paid for by the creative director of Chanel, Karl Lagerfeld, to connect art with his handbags. This is building as a bauble. Every surface is shiny. It's made of moulded plastic slotted together. And it's a no-brainer that Chanel chose the architect Zaha Hadid to make it. Her fabulous creations always catch the eye. But why does it look like this?
It's a shell.
Right.
It's not a shell literally, but it's shell-like.
Yeah.
It's a structure, trying to imitate natural form. And, you know, it's a kind of cocoon-like environment.
Inside the cocoon, the current exhibition is Hadid's flamboyant work. And all of it fulfills a brief from Chanel. Grab attention. But I wonder where we come in the relationship.
Do you think about the individual user, the individual person, and what they will feel when they're going around?
I don't know how they want people to feel like. I mean, the whole thing about really kind of investing time to look into how you do space is to make people feel good or different in a nice way or experience something which they have not yet experienced.
It's clear to me that for Hadid, it's all about sensation and novelty, and nothing about how her building might act as a social place for us. Since the 90s, there's been a lot of money for architects to create these kind of spaces. Corporate clients have caught on to the power of a building as an advert, and the world's architects have schmoozed for all they're worth.
What I love about her, she's a genius, she invented something. There's no other woman architect in the world like this, and hardly any men. The inside and the outside of her work, and it works really well together. Huh? I must say I love it. Huh? Sorry there are so many people, because it looks better with nobody.
That says it all, really. People just mess up his lovely edifice. This is a spectacular building, I mean, quite literally. Yet it's also oddly unmoving. It's very untactile. Moving through, you just feel like you're floating through space. The only thing I can compare it to is being sucked into a computer. And this is the building at full blast. If playfulness is what brings us together, this isn't it. Even if Hadid's thing is to give you a thrill, I think it's an empty thrill. It's not like there haven't always been spectacular buildings. For as long as humans have had egos and money, they've employed architects to design them incredible creations, to celebrate themselves or their gods. These days, though, flamboyance is no longer the exception, it's the rule. And what's the point of it all? Is it all just meaningless sensory stimulation, like fizzy pop? The proof that it doesn't need to be like this lies just around the corner from Hadid's Chanel building, here in Paris. For me, the Sainte-Chapelle, the Holy Chapel, is one of the most beautiful buildings on Earth. It's spectacular, yes, but this spectacular isn't just for the thrill of it. It has a purpose. Before French Gothic, churches were quite squat, quite chunky. But then the French invented these soaring, slender rib vaults, which allowed the architecture to rise up to God and the walls to dissolve into a heavenly, ethereal glow. This is architecture all about awe. It's designed to provoke a very physical response in you when you come in. It makes your eyes rise up to God and your jaw drop. This is properly awesome. Everyone coming in here would have got what the building was saying about their relationship to each other and to God. So even though a church like this may not seem a place for play, it is, in the sense that its very shape tells you a story about who you are and what your place in the universe is. But what are we getting from architecture these days? More and more impossible-looking art galleries, museums and concert halls are cropping up everywhere. But are they giving us what we really need?
Now this is a building you can't miss.
These days, buildings that look playful are turning up all over. But how well do they work? This is the Casa de Música in Oporto, Portugal, by the Dutch architect Rem Koolhaas. It's a concert hall, and it's weird. The way in is a strange cavern. It leads to a warren of oddly shaped rooms made of clashing materials and random styles that surround the central performance hall. It seems wonderfully playful.
Aluminium.
Rough concrete surfaces jut up against jagged metal floors and unfinished walls.
Copper lift. Gold. Tastes good.
At every turn, a different mood grabs you in a series of disconnected thrills.
Neon.
But I wonder what it's like for the people who come in here every day.
It's not an easy building. I've worked here for 4 years, and sometimes I have to think about how can I go from the 5th floor to the -2.
It's such a spectacular building to work in. Of course, there are occasions where you would like the building to be a bit more soothing, maybe. But all in all, it's nice to have sensation, even if sometimes it is an overload of sensation.
The rich variety of different spaces all kind of jump cut.
The man responsible for this disorientating, difficult place used to be a screenwriter. He says he made this building like a series of jump cut scenes, because life is like that.
To kind of suggest that life can ever be a kind of smooth unfolding of events is so counterintuitive. I think that in a public building there is a kind of certain obligation to be at least kind of realistic.
Even if it unsettles people?
People are not necessarily unsettled. They're intrigued, I would say.
That's how the architect sees it. But what would a psychiatrist say?
I think this building is psychotic.
Really? Dr. Paul Keedwell is a psychiatrist with a particular interest in how buildings affect our behaviour.
I think this building is kind of an experiment with our senses. I think it causes anxiety. I don't think it causes playfulness. This is a work of art, this is a sculpture. This isn't a place to encourage play. This is a place of shock and awe. This is a place to entertain us. But we're passive in that experience. If you want to make a place playful, you allow people to interact with it.
From the outside, the building to me it is mesmerising. I look across the cityscape and I think, gosh, that's a strange-looking building.
The way you're talking about it actually is how you talk about sculpture, isn't it? It's not how you talk about social space. It's not talking about how, I mean, there's such a gap between what architects think human beings want and what they actually need. And what you're just describing there is just, I think, the initial stimulation you get from wandering through all these unconnected shapes.
When I put the psychiatrist's assessment of the building to Koolhaas, it didn't worry him.
We are able to deal with much less predictability than we thought. The building, I think, delivers for the public simply more adventure.
And that's interesting, because the building, you don't understand the building from the outside.
Who says you have to understand the building?
Yeah.
It's becoming clear to me that buildings can seem playful, but actually add to our anxiety. Now that science is beginning to understand how our environment affects us, perhaps architects can no longer behave like artists, simply making reflections of our fractured life.
I know I asked that question earlier in the programme, is our architecture pulling us apart? I don't think this building pulls us apart. I think it reflects that kind of disjunction and disunity in society. It lets us in, but it doesn't really pull us together. I wonder whether architecture ever can nowadays.
But where did the architectural flamboyance of the likes of the Casa de Musica and Hadid's Chanel Pavilion come from?
When I was growing up in the 70s, modern architecture was rarely flashy. It was serious stuff. Libraries, town halls, art galleries. It may have had its problems, but at least it had moral purpose. Then something changed. Then we got that.
The Guggenheim Art Gallery in Bilbao, Spain, was designed by the Canadian architect Frank Gehry. It was the first of an entirely new generation of crazy-looking spaces, and it's unbelievably popular. Within a year of its opening, it had paid for itself, a cool 97 million euros. That stunning financial success is why Hadid, Koolhaas, and a whole generation of architects are employed to make funny-looking buildings.
There wasn't much work in the 70s recession, so these young architects spent their time dreaming up a new kind of architecture. 1,000 styles were born, but which would win the space race? Simple, the ones that shouted the loudest.
It was the invention of wow. Their idea was to make buildings that looked crazy, and Bilbao showed crazy was a big earner. But what does that give us as an experience? These huge columns are not solid, they're hollow. The big blocks of stone are wafer thin. It's all for show. There's no attention to the social aspect of seeing art together, nowhere even to sit and chat. I think people are just coming to stare at the building.
When you come here and you've had a look around, does it live up to the hype?
Yes. Out the building does.
Some people really don't know why they come here, just for the building, but they're not aware of what is shown inside.
It's quite a sexy building.
It's hot. The inside it can be a little bit disappointing.
So it's a bit like a kind of ta-da, and then you go inside and it's a bit like, oh.
Yeah.
Frank Gehry's brand of architecture is all about surfaces. I mean, it comes from the city where he works, Los Angeles, which is the city of glittering surfaces of the film industry. Look at the titanium, how it's sort of very ripply, almost like a kind of foil wrapper for a sweet. It's very beautiful architecture. It's all about visual stimulation. It's all about titillating the eyes, as it were. But it always feels like he's playing with me. It always feels like, it just feels like a stage set. It feels fake somehow. It's that fakery that I guess I don't like in architecture. I like my architecture to be robust, to be three-dimensional, to have real oomph in all five senses. And to me, this building doesn't deliver that.
We don't just need the spectacular. We need spaces for meaningful human interaction. It seems to me that architects have forgotten the true purpose of social buildings. I went to Los Angeles to see how the Guggenheim's architect would answer that.
I don't know where you're going. Are you trying to get me to admit that I'm an egomaniac trying to stamp myself on the city at the expense of all the poor citizens that live there, and I'm in their face, and I should stop?
Well, yes, I suppose I am, really. Bilbao made Gehry the most famous architect in the world.
Do you like my statue?
I know. Who did that?
Some guy in Brooklyn did that, so I put it on here.
He agreed to give me a tour of his workshop.
So all this foreground you can't film?
Can't film the foreground.
Turn off.
Well, most of his workshop. It's all top secret.
This is a big model.
Zabu.
This is a big model. You could almost crawl inside, it feels like.
This model is Gehry's latest shiny art gallery. This time for Abu Dhabi. He agrees spectacle is the name of the game.
The spectacle is what our world is all about lately. That's the context of what we're in. And the implication that one pishy little building in Bilbao, which you want to call spectacle, is going to upset the world, and that the implication of that is people should go back to doing dumb, neutral boxes. And there's a whole group of people who want to do that. And it doesn't lead to an architectural profession of much substance.
Surely there's something in between banality and overexcitement.
Yeah, but if I did, in my lifetime, 30 Bilbaos, which I'm not going to be able to do, so you don't have to worry, it ain't going to derail the world.
But derail the world, it really did. It's called the Bilbao effect. An epidemic of impossible-looking clones hit riverfronts everywhere. Demand for flashy buildings turned architects into artists, paid to deliver economic regeneration with spectacle. The free market doesn't care how you experience the building. It wants architecture that looks good in the photos, that shouts at you from afar. Never mind that when you actually get there, it's a bit of a letdown. Who cares? We're like adrenaline junkies after the next hit, and business spends billions of pounds trying to feed our habit. But, you know, is it really what we need? I don't think so. Mostly, that doesn't matter much, but sometimes it really does. The Jewish Museum here in Berlin should matter a lot, because it's about the Holocaust. But it comes from a similar school to the Guggenheim, so it suffers from some of the same problems. This is the Garden of Exile, and it's been designed specifically to disorientate you, to sort of describe what it's like to be in exile. The floor slopes upwards of these great forest of columns to confuse you, and the normal world is up there, out of reach. It's meant to make you feel like you've lost all your bearings somehow. The architect of this museum, Daniel Liebeskind, is the go-to guy for buildings that use the physical shape of a space to make you feel. This space is one of the voids that run through the centre of the building. Floor-to-ceiling empty spaces that you can look into, but you can never enter. They're meant to represent the absence of murdered Jews from German society. And the floor is littered with these thousands and thousands of faces. I'm struggling with this unsubtle manipulation of my feelings in a place that should be so serious. And you feel that right here, where you have to make a decision at the crossroads, which way to go. Do you go that way towards the future? Or do you choose the path towards exile and emigration? Or do you choose the path towards the Holocaust? I'm not convinced. Could there be more of a cliche than standing at the crossroads of history? In the Holocaust Tower, the effect is immediate. You come in here and it's freezing cold. The ceiling's right up there and there's a little chink of light you can just see. But the effect on your senses is immediate. When you're deprived of any kind of sensory stimulation, you do feel imprisoned in some way. We've got this light, but without it, this is what it feels like. Thousands come here, but to me it's just like Stonehenge. Everyone's snapping away. If Disney had designed a theme park for the Holocaust, this would be it. And that's the problem. It's the architecture that's the draw, not the serious content. What we need is a place to connect us to our common history. What we're getting is an ever more thrilling stage set that does nothing for us but excite our appetite for novelty. Since the success of the Guggenheim in Bilbao, architecture has become more about creating brands for mammon and less about buildings for people. There are social buildings where architects understand the importance of play, but I suspect they're not always as playful as they seem. This place looks like a cross between a cathedral and a living room. In fact, it's Westfield Shopping Centre in London. Shopping used to be a necessity. Now it's our most popular leisure activity. Everything about this place seems to shout, relax, have fun, enjoy yourself.
So when you're designing a space like this, what kind of space are you trying to create for the users?
Ideally, what we try and do is reference a lot of public spaces, successful public spaces where people gather for leisure activities. And we try and take the best of that and incorporate it into the design of our building.
So it's obviously it's a very glittering space, it's a very visually stimulating space. That must be sort of at the core, is it?
It is, it is. I think the roof is a very successful way of achieving that. We tried to create something that was almost like the clouds moving overhead, so you didn't feel that you were confined within a structure. If we provide an environment which is comfortable for the customer, odds are that they're going to engage time and again in the business of retail. The longer they stay, the more likelihood they spend.
He seems rather proud of what he's made. For many of us, giant shopping centres have become our new social spaces, where we meet up and hang out. Some of us even seem to love them.
How long have you spent here?
All day.
Really? Oh my God.
5 hours. Yeah.
What do you do when you come here? Just shopping?
Yeah, we look around for sales and that. Cinema. Yeah. This is my second home. I'm here quite often.
Here it's a community.
Really? So you come and meet people, you come and meet friends and stuff, you know people here?
I come and meet friends, and then the occasional shop, and I buy everything together.
So how does it rate as a second home?
It's excellent. It's treating me excellently.
But is it really treating us excellently? As the architect said, it's designed for one purpose, to make us spend. And I want to know how.
This is a place of glittering surfaces, like cut and paste architecture, like all these beautiful sparkly shapes have all been stitched together, but with no sort of coherence. It's a bit of a, I don't know, it's a bit of a cacophony, I think, of shapes. It's a bit like Frank Gehry, but dumbed down. But I'll tell you one thing, it's a serious play machine. So why am I wearing these rather fabulous glasses?
These glasses are allowing us to record what you're seeing.
Dr. Tim Holmes studies neuromarketing. That's how retail designers mess with our brains.
What you're wearing is actually a mobile eye tracker.
So how does it do it? How does it work?
There's a camera on the front, and then you've got a little infrared beam that will come off of here. We'll see a little dot that will correspond to where your pupil is actually looking.
So I'll have to be very careful where I'm looking.
Yep.
All right, off I go.
These magic specs are cutting edge in the world of market research. Dr. Tim uses them to show how the apparently playful design of a building like this can secretly control our behaviour.
How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. It's lovely. My nails could do with a bit of a shine, I think.
Yes, they do.
Look at those. That's incredible.
I know, it will last you for 2 weeks.
OK, that's enough exploring. Let's see what Dr. Tim makes of it all.
So what did I look at?
One of the main features of the mall that you were clearly paying attention to was the roof. But what we actually see in these eye movements is that points of light attract your attention. That's a fairly well-documented effect. Light, light, light,
oh, yeah, look at
light, me. Light,
go to all the
light,
glitter.
All the,
all
yes.
the glitter. Look at it.
What's interesting about the way the mall roof's been designed is with this dappling effect, it actually creates many more individual points of light than if it was completely clear.
So what does that achieve, I mean, for the shopping sector?
Because your attention is not stationary, there's a chance you're going to sweep your eyes past something that they can use to grab your attention.
Actually, I'm being moved through the space. I am literally being a puppet on a string.
Well, I think it's exactly that. I think actually it's slightly more sinister than that even. I think the mall is delivering the prey to the stores.
It's called atmospherics, design that influences our behaviour. For example, research shows that if a place feels like home, we'll keep returning to it, whether we need to buy anything or not. But to be honest, the strongest feeling I had was being lost.
I felt a bit like I was in a kind of a catatonic state. I kind of lost my ability to know where I was going, I think.
Bingo, and I think that is a deliberate intention in this mall, in any mall. They're trying to mess with your ability to navigate.
So why do they want me to be lost?
If you're not lost, you can go straight to a location. They want you in a state of exploration because this is what makes you susceptible to any of the attention-grabbing cues that are thrown your way, and that's why your eyes need to be moving all the time, and that's where the mall is doing its job to feed you into these stores.
It's a space designed literally to seduce me.
Absolutely, yes.
They're cunning beggars.
I wouldn't trust them.
So the next time you go shopping, beware. This place is the ultimate subversion for commercial purposes of our need to play. I knew I found it odd when I first came in here, and now I know why.
Keep St. George in my heart.
But what about a space that you'd think was designed specifically for play? A football stadium. Surely the architects would be thinking about us in a place like this. The new Wembley is a national icon, but it replaced a beloved stadium, and some fans complain the atmosphere is sterile. What's the magic ingredient that's disappeared?
This is Aston Villa in the striped shirts playing Manchester United.
Psychologists who are studying that question think one answer is the design of stadia used to be about the crowd, but now it's about the spend.
Look at these guys here. They're sitting down to a 3-course meal with fine wine and so on and so forth. That's not cheap. And the people who bring atmosphere to football are less able to access this stadium precisely because it's been designed to facilitate this kind of community. They call it the prawn sandwich brigade, don't they?
Dr. Cliff Stott is Europe's preeminent authority on the behaviour of football crowds. He's critical of current stadium design.
What architecture hasn't done is to properly understand how it articulates with the psychology of the crowd. The experience that people want from an event like this is not directly to do with the game. It's to do with coming together and to experience the event as a collective, as a crowd.
So what do we want as a crowd?
Unbridled joy. Unbridled joy is the moment where that goal goes in. Is the moment where we can find relief from the everyday pressures of life. Look at the Switzerland fans, they're all standing up. Well, why are they standing up? Because the physical act of standing up is bringing us together in terms of a collective sense of self. And a lot of football fans want to have a place within these stadia where they can come together and to stand and to be together as a crowd to add the atmosphere that many football fans feel we've lost because of the sterility of the environment that's created in these new, highly regulated stadiums.
This place is a building as a business plan. It's got 160 corporate entertainment suites, but no provision for ordinary fans to do what they really want, to stand, but to stand in safety. In German stadiums, that's already happening. If architects here would only come up with good designs, the government might once again allow crowds to stand, and we could get back to having the time of our lives. Why is it so difficult to find spaces that really work? This is Trent Park Social Club, only a few miles from Wembley, yet architecturally it could be on a different planet. For a start, it doesn't have an architect.
Hello there. Can I have a pint of Guinness, please?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Don't waste your time in giving me a reason. Let's get served on the earth vibe. Let's get down to the part where you were leaving.
People seem really happy here. It has real purpose. There's a sense of community, and yet it really is a nothing kind of building. I'm puzzled. What is it about this place?
So how many years have you been coming here?
I've been coming here for years, for about 10, 12 years.
Oh my God. You must be doing something right.
Well, they are, good music, good fun, good crack.
What do you like about the place?
Very homely, friendly.
What about the place itself? Does the place itself, the look of it, the shape of it,
It doesn't really bother me. Never judge a book by the cover.
It's not about the building, it's about the people.
Really?
It's about the people, it's about the fun.
But surely the building can't be irrelevant.
I've arranged to meet an expert who thinks it's the very lack of an architect that's the key to its success.
What's really important is that it's a nondescript building. It's a building where people feel really intimate, they feel that they're at home. It could almost be like their living room. So architecture is important, but it's important because it's nondescript rather than a grand building.
So the people, the kind of nondescript nature of it, the people can then add the kind of life to the place.
Exactly. The people are the place, and that's why these places are so important in the community, because there's fewer and fewer places where people can go to and have those shared experiences and those shared memories.
Obviously it's the people that make this place, but the architecture works as well, but in a really surprising way to me. It's not about the grand gesture of the place, it's very nondescript nature. It makes people feel relaxed. They can be whatever they want to be here. If that's the case, why do we need architects at all? The answer is, architects who understand that a great building is as much about people as a headline-grabbing exterior can really enrich our lives. What's shocking is that there are so few of them.
What a great bit of dancing there, folks. Well done.
Throughout this whole series, I've been arguing that architects need to start relinquishing some of their power and control to create a more people-centred architecture. Just a pipe dream? I don't think so. And the evidence is right here in London, at a building designed in 1951, literally as a palace for the people.
This is the festival, a diverse place of serious fun and light-hearted solemnity.
The Royal Festival Hall was completed as part of the Festival of Britain. Its lead architect, Leslie Martin, designed it to be the first concert hall in the UK to welcome everyone, whatever their class, through its doors. This might be a concert hall, but the building's really all about the foyers. The architect, as you come in, keeps the ceiling really low to kind of heighten the anticipation, to tantalise you. Then you get to here, and you can see right through the building already. And then the whole space opens up in a big whoosh. The idea was to create a vast space like a town square where everybody could mix. Architecture would show us all how to live together. I love how every little design detail is all about letting people move through space. Like this handrail, how it flares at the bottom of the staircase, allowing the crowds to spill out. But it's also about how you feel the pleasure of being in this space. Like this cantilevered staircase, you can sort of see right the way through, so that whether you're going up or whether you're coming down, you feel like you're floating on air. It's not just about moving through space. It's social mobility written into the shape of a building. You've got to remember what London was like when this was built, a city sharply stratified according to class. And yet here was a building where anyone could come, where the classes could collide in its open foyers. This was radical stuff. And in a way, it still is today. Anyone can come here, do what they want, and stay all day, without buying so much as a cup of coffee.
It's got quite a homely feel about it, which is weird considering it's all glass and kind of shiny floors.
Do you think there is anything about the way the space is laid out, the way it feels and the design of it that makes you want to come here and feel relaxed?
I think so. I think because it can be so many different things. I have my business meetings in here. I'll have a meeting over there and then I'll come and do the knitting group over here. I know there's a group of comic book artists who meet here as well, and often we'll end up kind of sitting together eventually.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's a building that brings people together in that way?
Definitely, absolutely.
Which is pretty rare these days, isn't it?
Knits people together, you might
knits
say.
people, very good. I saw what you did there, Very clever. I think the key to the success of this modest building is that it allows us to adapt it to how we need it to be. The space is flexible and generous. Its spirit is truly democratic and playful. But the Royal Festival Hall is not the only example of a place designed with us in mind. Architects can make a difference when they're inspired by ideas of social inclusion and of our need for play. The Pompidou Centre in Paris went a whole step further. It was commissioned as a mix of arts and community centre on a wave of people power in the aftermath of the Paris riots of 1968. The design team was led by a young British architect, Richard Rogers. He wanted to make the building as revolutionary as the times.
Which adapts the building to the needs, rather than the needs to the building.
It's a building that responds to people's wishes. We didn't want a dumb box. We wanted something which related to the people and the people related back.
For Richard Rogers, the job of the architect was to design a kit of movable parts which the building's users could control. The whole of its front was to be made up of a so-called talking facade, a vast array of audio-visual screens.
Each one of those screens would be showing different things. We were going to link up with the British Museum, the Museum of Modern Art. So you would be reading the facade.
But then the political climate in France changed, and the new president, Giscard d'Estaing, was worried about handing so much power to ordinary people.
He started to say, well, who's going to control this facade? And in actually saying that, he destroyed it, because that meant suddenly became not a cultural, but a political statement.
It could have been the moment when buildings became truly playful, but the world had moved on. When the Pompidou Centre opened, the talking facade had gone. It wasn't even free to get into. It looked playful, but by then that was all that mattered. We'd missed our chance. Buildings like the Pompidou Centre and the Festival Hall were meant to be for the people. Then came the 1980s. Flashy appearance took over from substance, and with it a new creed, free market fundamentalism. If you wanted to play, you had to pay. People-centred ideas were gone. But what if we relit that fire? What if a whole new generation of young architects got impatient with all that flashy-looking stuff and became inspired again by those lost dreams of real play? If architecture was truly playful, what would it look like? Something like this. This building is an arts venue not far from Cambridge. Its architects wanted to see what would happen if they handed over control to anyone who wanted to join in. Today, those who made it happen are back to celebrate its success. Oh, blimey. I know what you're thinking. The building looks like a junkyard, but it's not about the look of it at all. It's about the spirit. It's about the process, it's about the people behind it. That's what makes really great architecture. This building, to me, it's like a carnival frozen in space. I say carnival because the normal order of things was reversed. The architect wasn't in charge, the people were, and it changed the lives of everyone involved. So what was the architect's role in all this?
It was a sort of coordination exercise. So people came up with ideas or material, and it was more about saying, yeah, you can do that, explaining how it would actually work. These windows are actually very beautiful. And we never actually found out who dropped them. They just turned up one morning.
This reminds me a little bit of Stonehenge. It's about the coming together of people through making a space, through making a building. Of course, I don't want Britain covered in ramshackle-looking buildings, however much fun they might be. What I want is truly playful, truly great architecture. And for that to happen, architects have to change how they work. They have to relinquish some of their creative control to let the likes of you and me in. And there are one or two architects who are finally making that happen.
The gaming industry has shown us technology that can basically demystify the old methods of designing buildings.
Michael Cohn is an architect who believes that the technology used in internet games can enable ordinary people to get involved with architects in designing buildings.
There are people making creative choices, and in some games, like the one we're looking at now, they are actually designing environments.
This is an internet game where millions of people design virtual cities. So on here, people are actually contributing all around the world They could all sort of feed into this, is that right?
Yeah, at any moment, someone can add something new to this. And if you look carefully, you'll see it's actually changing.
So it's continually evolving. I mean, like a normal city is.
Well, absolutely. You're now seeing trends where the architectural profession is looking at technology and thinking, you know what, there's something in this for us.
Architects are discovering that new software like this can make manipulating shapes much more easy. Maybe we'll all be able to do it soon.
It's amazing how fast that changes.
Yeah.
The type of buildings, the pattern, the rhythm of the buildings, and assembling all of those choices into a little bit of code that says, now draw this.
So if architects can do it, and ordinary people around the world can do it, what happens when you put them together?
Imagine if you were doing this with a real community and talking at the same time to that community. They were actually describing, let's see what if, and see which choices are best. We can measure the outcomes before we build.
I think the potential of this is so exciting. I don't think architects have grasped this anywhere near enough. But I think the potential is amazing because the whole point of this is that it democratises the process of architecture. Looking back at some of the buildings we've seen in this series, if they'd gone through this democratic process using this technology, in my view, they could have been so much more successful, inside and out. Right now, because of economics, the world's a very different place. Some people say it's the end of an era, the death of the flashy icon project. But maybe it's the start of a new one. Maybe this is the moment. We know more than ever now about what buildings are doing to our bodies and our brains, and technology is finally allowing us to create buildings that you and I can control. If we understand architecture better, maybe we can make it better too. If you're bored with the same old architecture, take control of a building by designing a school with the Open University. Go to channel4.com/buildings and follow the links.
The Fright Fest season starts tonight at 9 on Film 4 with the creepy Swedish film Let the Right One In. But coming up on Channel 4, Jump Further, Move Faster. It's the best urban street sports made into movies, Concrete Circus, all part of Street Summer.